Hello, and welcome back to Gunfighter Life, the podcast where we talk about gunfighting the right way, with God at the center, Judeo-Christian values, and real-world first-hand experience. Today we're going to discuss how are you training, how are you practicing, is it based on reality, likelihood, scenarios, or something different? Plug in the bio, you want to skip around 3 minutes and 45 seconds in. First and foremost, I am a servant of God, preacher, a fisher of men. God is number one in my life, and everything that I do in this podcast is no different, and I don't apologize for that. A little bit about me in the background. I grew up, I guess what you would consider a heathen. Didn't grow up a Christian, but I grew up in the southeastern United States, what most would consider very poor. Hunting and fishing and shooting. Joined the Marine Corps at 17, did a couple of combat tours in Iraq. After my combat tours in Iraq, I was an urban warfare instructor for the United States Marine Corps under Mojave Viper. I also served in law enforcement for several years in L.A.P.D. I worked patrol assignments and more specialized assignments, where by God's grace He got me through some nasty places in this world of war zones and some of the nastiest streets in the country. Not because I am better, because God chose to have mercy on me and had a purpose for me, and I'm thankful for that. After my time in law enforcement, I was a private contractor for federal government, for a 3-letter government agency I won't specify, doing private contracting work. I'm very much involved in guns and gunfighting. I also served in the U.S. Army, both full-time and part-time National Guard. I should say my primary MOS is in both branches of the military or infantry, as of one sort or another. Specialized infantry in the Marine Corps and an MOS that no longer exists. I started competition shooting even before I joined the Marine Corps at 17. I won my first gold medal even before I joined the Marine Corps at 17. I've been blessed by God with the talents He's given me to win more shooting competitions than I can remember. I've won most of my competitions in rifle and pistol, but I've also competed in archery and shotgun and even muzzleloader, knife throwing, hatchet throwing. I've competed in all that. I've also been a professional big game hunter and guide. Like I said, I grew up hunting and fishing and shooting. I've done it to put meat on the table because I like to put food on the table with the talents God's given me. I don't apologize for that. I've done it as a professional hunter and guide. I've slain all manner of beast and guided for all manner of beast. Bear and wolf and elk and deer, mule deer, whitetail deer. I've slain ram and fallow deer and countless animals. And I don't apologize for that either. F.B.I. certified, firearms instructor, N.R.A, and a bunch of other 3-letter government agency certifications. Blessed be the Lord my rock, who trains my hands for war and my fingers for battle. Psalm 144. I've been blessed to be the commander of a tactical team, an S.R.T special response team in a large metropolitan area, where our primary job was to stop active shooters. But again, first and foremost, I'm a servant of God, called by God to share the good news, preacher, a fisher of men. With that, we will roll into the day's topic. So I'll start this episode with a couple of caveats. You've heard my bio if you just listened to it, or if not, just know that I've trained military, civilians, and law enforcement for quite a long time. Right now, I'm the general manager for a firearms and training business, which mostly caters to what I would call your average shooter. Your average person that owns guns or wants to get into guns. And I see them come in, by they I mean colloquially, like, this is a vast generalization. I realize that. But they come in, they put up a man-sized target, put it out at a few yards away, and they take their gun out of a case and they load it administratively, and they put a couple of rounds downrange, and they put their gun back in the case after they're done shooting, and then they leave. Now, there's nothing wrong with this, and I encourage this, especially for somebody that's just bought a gun, just getting into guns, just wants to be familiar with the gun. But this isn't gun owner life. This is gunfighter life. Do you expect a gunfight to be you walk up to a table with your Glock in a Glock box and you set it on a table and you take it out and you put rounds in the magazine, you put the magazine in under no time stress, and something just stands there, somebody, the bad guy just stands there broadside to you or just looking right at you with no time limit and just stands there while you shoot however many rounds you want to and then put the gun back in the case and walk away? Seems like no gunfight ever. So what are you training for? What are you practicing for? Like I said, I'm not knocking. There's a time and a place if you just bought a gun or you're just getting into guns, just go to the range and get familiar with the gun. There's a time to just learn how to dry fire. Just put snap caps, dummy rounds in your gun, load it and unload it and set it down and learn how to administratively load it. But assuming, like most of us, there is a limited budget. I don't just mean in cost of ammo or amount of ammo. That is part of it, but more important is time, a limited time budget. I work at a shooting range. I work for a firearms training company. Even I have a very, what I would consider, limited time to be able to train during a week. If I use myself as an example, getting up, reading my Bible and praying before working out, working, 40, more than 40, probably near 50 hours a week on a regular week. Reading my Bible again in the evening, working out again in the evening, praying again. 2 workouts a day, being a husband to my wife, training the dog, practicing my dry fire every day. There's a limited time for those things, a limited time budget, a limited ammo budget. I try, like I said, dry fire every day. To me, dry firing is more important than live firing. I don't think just for me, I think that's just a statement of fact. If I had to pick one, I would rather just dry fire than live fire, but I try to get at least 1 to 2 training sessions in live fire in a week. Many of you have different restraints or different schedules, but I think we can all agree that we would like to have more time in training and shooting. There's not many of us that can say, I've had all the training this week or all the time behind the trigger this week that I wanted or needed or were beneficial. So with that being said, how are you spending that time? If you do get the opportunity to go out in the woods or go out and train, are you just going out and putting a target up at who knows what distance, a very easy close distance, is just taking your gun out of the case and firing a few rounds and putting it back in the case? Are you practicing practically? Are you practicing for what is likely to happen? Are you not just doing the fundamentals, but are you trying to master the fundamentals? My go-to standard is a certain number of headshots in a row with a handgun, just standing unsupported, my regular shooting position at 50 yards, or an even smaller target at 25 yards if I can't get the range. And many would say, well, that's not practical, but I would argue that in my experience it is very practical because to do anything else, to be great at it, you have to master the fundamentals. And I know from experience that under very stressful situations, your ability to hit a target generally degrades. If I can hit a headshot at 50 yards with no real external stress, hitting that shot at 7 yards when I've just been running or fighting on the ground or covered in blood or sweat or whatever, that's still an easy shot. If you only ever practice at 3 yards because you're like, 3 yards is all I need for a defensive handgun encounter, which I would argue in and of itself is a fallacy. But even if you think that, if you're just barely able to make good hits at that distance with no stress, what do you think is going to happen when you're covered in blood? When you're all jacked up on adrenaline, when you've just been wrestling on the ground for who knows how long, you've just seen some traumatic thing. There are many ways I've heard this said, train like you're going to fight, or one of the things I heard when I was a Marine that always stuck with me was, practice doesn't make perfect. Perfect practice makes perfect. Also, I've learned over time that whatever you're doing in repetition will reinforce that. If you're getting in garbage reps, if you're getting in garbage repetitions with crappy fundamentals, you're probably going to reinforce those crappy fundamentals. Force yourself to be a master of the fundamentals. And then practice your likely scenarios. Getting into today's topic a little bit more deeply. Practice practically. After I've got my accuracy standard in, perhaps, and I'm not telling you to do what I do, I'm just telling you to think about what you're doing. But, work on your super up close CQB stuff. Work on your quick draw. Being super accurate is great, and I would say it is super important, but you must get that gun into action. It does you no good to rush and miss. It also does no good to be killed before you ever get your gun into action. You have to balance those two. So practice whatever way you normally carry and practice getting that gun into action quickly, whatever that is. Obviously, for most people, for most of us, that's going to be getting it from the holster to hits on target quickly. Maybe that doesn't apply to you. Maybe you live in some super oppressive state where you can't carry a gun on you all the time. Then practice whatever it is. Practice getting that shotgun from next to your bed to on target quickly. If you're using a handgun, practice getting multiple good hits on target quickly. Don't ever assume with a handgun shot unless it's right in the tee box, in that one little area. Don't ever assume that you're going to get a one-shot stop on that. Even a good center hit. Most handgun rounds are not fatal, so practice getting multiple quick hits on target quickly. One of the classic defensive drills, 2 to the chest, 1 to the head, the Mozambique drill, 2 to the chest, 1 to the head. There's a reason almost no tactical defensive military law enforcement schools teach just draw out and shoot 1 round, center mass. I don't know of that being a stage anywhere in any qualification, in any good defensive thing. It could be an accuracy drill, like draw and get 1 round, draw, get 1 round to see your consistency in your time. But nobody considers that like a defensive response. 2 to the chest, 1 to the head. Or draw, give me, 6 round center mass. Or 2 to the chest, 2 to the pelvic girdle. Or maybe draw and 1 good, precise headshot. And then if you don't immediately call your shot and get that good headshot, follow up with another. And just a good thing is always be prepared for another shot. Even if you think it's a good solid headshot, if you follow up for another one, if that first one was a good one, that head won't be there anymore. It'll be down. So whatever you're doing, practice to always get ready for another shot, even if you don't take it. But again, back to the person that just goes up and sits on the bench and loads their gun and administratively loads it. And that's fine if you're learning how to do it. But once you know how to do it, how are you going to load that gun under stress? Even if you are, let's say limited at some kind of range, you can probably grab the reload wherever you carry it on your spare mag pouch in your pocket and do a quick reload and get that gun back into action. So after your last round, drop that mag and put the next one in as quick as you reasonably can and get that slide back forward and get that gun back into action. Reinforce that habit instead of just setting the gun down and looking for your next mag and putting it in and all that stuff. Do it like you would do it if you had to do it for real. Likewise with your malfunctions. If your gun malfunctions, don't just sit there and stare at it like a frog looking at a wristwatch. Once you learn how to clear malfunctions, tap rack bang or tap roll rack, whatever you learned. Or rip, reinsert rack for a double feed, or remove the source of ammunition, rack, reinsert, back on target. Practice is the way you need to practice it if you have to use it. Practice with what you are likely going to have. If you go to the range and practice with a nice big OWB, holster on a big war belt, and I love war belts. I have a war belt. I use it quite often. But if you're primarily practicing with that and you never carry like that, if you CCW with a pocket holster, I'm not saying you should or shouldn't, but then are you practicing that? Are you practicing that? Are you practicing getting that gun however you normally or most often carry it? Are you practicing getting that into action? And I'm talking to myself too. I need to probably do that more. do that quite a bit with my primary carry gun, but there's times when I can't carry that, when I'm out doing wind sprints or something like that. I should probably practice with that gun a little bit more. Practice the things that you are very likely to encounter that most of us don't practice very often. If you, especially dry fire, practice dry firing, laying on your back, laying on your stomach, rolling from one side to another side, getting hits on target. Once you learn how to call your shots, you can do all that dry fire. If you can do it live fire, great, but better to do it dry fire a couple of times than do it live fire never. But again, a lot of fights end up on the ground, and it may be before you are warranted or justified in pulling a gun out. Have you practiced, getting hits while laying on your back with a rifle, with a handgun? Rolling from one side to the other, laying on your stomach. Have you practiced your CQB techniques? Striking with whatever your arm is going to be, your long arm, your rifle. Have you practiced, hitting with the muzzle, hitting with the stock? Have you practiced, making space with your handgun, whether it's with your non-dominant hand pushing somebody back or hitting them in the face and making space and getting hits on target? Or using your handgun as a striking implement? Are you practicing the stuff that you're likely to do? I know we all might have this picture of Hollywood in our head where, it's high noon. One of my favorite movies, by the way. But even in that movie, there was a lot of, ducking and running and tactical movement. But, where two men just walk out in the middle of the street at noon and the clock chimes and they just stand there and trade, shot for shot. That's a pretty dumb way to fight a gunfight. Are you practicing moving, stepping one way, stepping another way, stepping right, stepping left, turning right, turning left? What if all of a sudden the threat is behind you? Have you practiced turning and drawing and getting hits on target? If the guy's just standing right in front of you, facing you, he's not a threat and you have all the time in the world to get hits on target, would you even be justified in getting hits on target? Because generally if somebody has a gun or a knife or something, you probably want that gun out now and hits on target now. Again, I say stepping left, stepping right. If somebody's running at you with a knife, are you just going to stand there or are you going to move? You're probably going to move, whether you even think about it or not. So practice it now. Moving in one direction and then another direction and getting hits on target. Practice being in one place, drawing, getting hits on target, running to another place and drawing and getting hits on target. Again, practice practically. Think of likely scenarios. If you have people that you can train with, set up 1 or 2 targets. That's another basic thing. Especially in today's world with threats, you practicing with multiple targets. Set up a scenario where, you're at an ATM and then there's 2 guys behind you. You see them in the glass. They have a gun or one of them has a gun. Can you turn and draw and get hits on target quickly? Or can you turn and draw and identify which one has the gun, which one doesn't? And obviously this is limited because nobody knows what the future holds. I don't know, you don't know, God alone knows what the future holds. But you can look at some statistics and see generalities of what often happens in a gunfight. Often most handgun shots aren't fatal. A lot of fights go to the ground. A lot of handgun fights happen really up close where you might need your CQB tactics. But a lot, especially recently, a lot happen at quite extended ranges. Some happen at 3 yards, some happen at 50 yards or even farther. Are you practicing for those contingencies? Are you practicing for that? What about one-handed shooting? One of the big benefits of a handgun is you can fight with it with one hand. Perhaps your other hand is grabbing a child or holding a baby or on the phone with 911, keeping somebody at bay, whatever the case may be. Strong hand, weak hand. And I hope this never happens, but maybe one of your hands is out of commission. It's broken in a fight. It's been shot. It's, for whatever reason, out of commission. Have you practiced, fighting one-handed with both hands? Drawing your gun with your weak hand, getting it out of wherever it is with your weak side hand? Have you practiced your transitions one hand to another? Have you practiced, using cover? We all like our good, standard, traditional shooting stance. Going back to what I talked about in the beginning, if you can get good hits at 25 yards, at 50 yards, even if you're off balance, even if you're leaning around a barricade, getting a good hit at 7 yards is way less of a challenge than if you only practice at 7 yards in your nice square range position and then all of a sudden you have to bend around with a gun in your weak hand around a door frame. So again, I say practice practically. Practice the fundamentals for sure. That's always the foundation, always the backbone, always what you go back to when you miss. Practice, getting that gun out on target. Practice getting quick, accurate follow-up shots on target. Practice moving. Practice cover. Practice transitions. Strong side and weak side. Again, when you get a malfunction, practice it like you would if there were somebody shooting at you and you had to get that gun back into action. Just set the gun down and look at it for a minute and then inspect it and then try and figure out what's going on and get the round out. Get that gun back into action now. If somebody is ever shooting at you, you don't want to be sitting there looking at your gun, figuring out why it won't work and trying to figure out what to do. You want it to kind of be called immediate action for a reason. You kind of want it to be second nature. You tap the bottom of the magazine, you rack it, and you get it back. Or you look and you see brass hanging out of your gun and you rip the magazine out, reinsert it, rack it, get it back into action. Shouldn't even have to think about it. That way you can use that brain power processing how to get out of the situation that you're in. Anyway, I guess I'll just say give some more thought to what you're doing next time you go to the range. With that, man, I want to say thanks for listening and have a blessed day. Don't forget to leave a review, like, subscribe. Check out goodshepherdtraining.com. Here's a tactical tip of the day. Safely, in a safe manner, pointed in a safe direction, all that stuff, when you get ready for dry fire, remove all ammunition, remove all sources of ammunition, make sure your gun is clear when you practice your dry fire. Or do this with an inert platform that's very similar to the gun that you normally carry. Next time you come home and it's dark and there's nobody in your line of fire, you sit there, you park your car, your seatbelt's still on, but you've already unloaded and made clear and everything else in dry fire mode. Again, safely. Practice you're sitting in your car getting that gun into action. Practice, you're stuck in there, you got to get your seatbelt off, get your gun out. Hits on your passenger side, on your driver's side. They're very different techniques. It's a very likely scenario, especially in the past couple of years where there's rioting and looting and mobs and cars, carjackings, anything like that. That nice square range stance doesn't do you much good when you're sitting in a car with a seatbelt on. So practice that. Practice in the daytime, practice in the nighttime. It's hard for me to get into actually the best ways to do that on an audio format, but just practice it. Practice, getting a couple shots off while you're in your car, dry fire, of course, and then practice getting out of your car and acquiring a sight picture. Practice dry fire, again, dry fire. There's somebody in front of your car. Do you know how to shoot both out of a windshield and into a windshield? You know how that angle and glass affects bullets, affects trajectory? Again, practice likely scenarios. But especially if you don't normally practice it, practice, you're seated in your car armed like you normally should be driving. Something happens and you have to engage targets, different places, different positions around the clock. It's your tactical tip of the day. Your tactical verse of the day. The Lord himself goes before you. He will be with you. He will never leave you nor forsake you. Do not be afraid or discouraged. Deuteronomy 31. With that, men, thanks for listening. Have a blessed day.